place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, and this is episode 1054 of Living Free in Tennessee. And my question is this: when I get closer to the mic, do I get louder? I'm not 100% sure that my audio is working right. So it could just be that for some reason, when I hit go, I don't hear the sound here. But it was just a little strange. I usually hear the sound. So I don't know what's up with that. So hopefully somebody will complain in the comments if we don't have good enough sound. So DFW, thank you, has just let me know that my sound is working and gets louder. So sometimes what happens is inadvertently my studio goes from this microphone to the one that's built into my laptop, and then you just get a lot of echo. And in this case, you're going to get room air conditioning noise because we have reached the time of year where it is hot. It is so hot. It's going to be 100 degrees tomorrow. Actually, it's not. It's going to be 99 degrees. Might as well be 100, in my opinion, at 99 degrees. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk ways that we are working to beat the heat on our homestead here, as well as cover all of our usual Monday segments, right? So that's what's up today. I also want to make sure that we thank our sponsors and all that other stuff. Before I do any of that, though, we had an episode last week that was 3 hours long where Tactical shared his story of recovery with everybody, starting with how things went wrong and then the steps he's taken and where he's come. And we've had a lot of emails come in, comments on direct message, not a lot of public commentary, but a lot of private commentary, text messages, that sort of thing. And if you haven't heard those episodes yet, I broke the 3-hour talk into 3 1-hour segments for the audio podcast so that you can kind of listen to one at a time. And it's not like this giant file. And then where was I in the file? So we have answered every one of those that we know that we've gotten. And I want to thank you for sending those in. And anybody a lot of people voiced that they didn't want to bother us with this, or they weren't sure they should reach out, but then they did. And the answer is this: if you feel compelled to reach out after hearing that, we are glad to listen to what you have to say. Like, the one thing we know we can do is listen to what you have to say and respond to it. If you have reached out and not gotten at least a response that says we've gotten your message, and Tactical's a pretty slow typer, so some of the responses may take a little bit more time. I've at least said it's received, and I want you to know, the initial reaction from him, and that he is writing back to you, or he's going to respond to you. He may respond in a video link that he sends you. It will not be a public video if he does that, by the way. A lot of private information has been shared with us. But if you're like, I wanted to reach out, but I didn't want to bother them, go ahead. That's like literally why we did that episode. That's why he finally wanted to talk about it. Is he said, I keep meeting people in the network who have maybe not the same experience, but similar impacts from it, or they have a loved one who's facing these kinds of things. And as I said, we're not psychiatrists or anything, but we can hear what you say. We can tell you what has worked for us. And I think hopefully that helps somebody else, take their next step. So thank you anyway. Wanted to make sure that got out first and foremost at the head of this episode. Now I'm going to talk about our featured event of today's show, and that is coming up this Sunday on June 29th. We are doing another meetup here at the Living Free in Tennessee HQ, the Holler Homestead. And I've been wanting to do about one meetup a month anyway. We did 2 in June just because we felt like we needed to process rabbits on this Sunday. And if we're doing something on the homestead that somebody could learn from anyway, we're just sort of doing a meetup. And here's how these meetups work. You come at like 1 o'clock on a Sunday. So that if you go to church, you can go to church and still make it. And we have a potluck. So that part does not involve you seeing rabbits be processed. We spent about an hour doing that. Last time we had a fun collection of things that people brought. And I usually make a main dish that's more meat based just because I know it's not so easy necessarily to travel with hot things or whatever. So I am making a chicken tomato soup is what's happening on Sunday. So TFW says we have 17 rabbits to process. Yeah. So in theory, so I'm not sure our rabbits are going to be exactly the right size to process. They look a little small to me right now. So we may just do a demo and let the rest of them grow out a little bit more. Somebody just emailed me, Tim Riley just emailed me and said, hey, I got 7 that need to go for meat if you want to use those in the class. And I was like, bring them out, because even if we end up doing mine, we can always do 7 more. Not a big deal. So the processing starts at 2 p.m. And the way that's going to work is that it's going to happen in a specific location. If you just want to come to the meetup and meet some people, come to the potluck. And then when we go on to rabbit processing, if that's not your your deal, don't walk over there. You can still meet some cool people, see what's up on the ground, see how any of my heat remediation projects are working. And it's a great way to meet other community members. You can find out all of this information at livingfreeintennessee.com. I also have a link directly to the specifics on the rabbit processing meetup on the website. At the link is in the show notes. I also want to thank 2 sponsors today. Sponsor number 1 is Discount Mylar Bags. DiscountMylarBags.com is where you can go to tap into Mylar bags, but also other food storage solutions. Also, with the whole China thing going on, I have a feeling that the stock he has there is the stock he has at the moment. And since we don't know exactly what's going on with tariffs, if you need bags, might be a good time to get bags at discountmylarbags.com. Sponsor number 2 today, agristaxadvice.com/LFTN to have a specific sign up experience. Anyway, Matthew Sersley from agristaxadvice.com has been active in our community. He's come to a number of events and just sat with people and talked to them about their situation. But one of the things he came up with is he's like, hey, I'm good at this thing, right? Like, I have a background. I'm a lawyer and I've learned about corporate finance. And now there's people who are starting businesses who may not be ready to hire a full-time firm. But what I can do if they keep track of their finances is I can analyze them. I can suggest different ways they might structure themselves to take advantage of the tax code. And then I can tell them how they need to track things and any risks associated with that so that they keep more of their money in their pocket. If you are in that situation, a secret side benefit is you suddenly become more organized with tracking your finances, which is good for making business decisions, by the way. Anyway, find out more about that at agristaxadvice.com. Now it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that's Tales from the Prepper Pantry, where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. I had quite a week last week. So, I wasn't planning on doing a 3-hour show on Wednesday, but it happened. And then, as you can imagine, after that show, which was very emotional, we decided that we did not need to rhinoceros through the rest of the day. We literally went out to Mexican food at the marina for dinner that night because I was like, I don't even want to cook. And so I went and ate food that's not as good as what I can cook at home at the marina, but I didn't have to cook or do dishes that night. Anyway, so the pantry is put back together right now. So we had this whole thing where I redid my pantry and there was stuff everywhere and it's been great. And I have all the freezers lined up. It's been awesome. And then Friday happened. And Friday was a day full of roadblocks starting from the moment we got up in the morning. It was like somebody was trying to keep us from going out of town to Amani and Rivers and check out what they've got going on and do the cheese demo. However, we just took one thing at a time, didn't let us upset us. And right after recording the show, we were like, okay, final wrap up. We'll leave. Tactical's off doing tactical things. I'm off doing Nicole things. And I got a text message on my phone. And the text message said, your freezer is at 32 degrees. Now, for those of you who have deep freezers, you know that they are not supposed to be at 32 degrees, which is still frozen. And I went out there and indeed they were at 32 degrees. And one of my little things of tomato sauce had defrosted. And I was like, we are supposed to already be on the road. And I was like, okay. So I just called Tactical over and we formed sort of like a bucket brigade of food from one freezer to the next. So the good news is I got notice in time so the food didn't get ruined. And also that I had space in other freezers. So we bucket brigaded everything from that freezer to first my chest freezer and then another upright freezer I have. And then we left town because I was like, maybe the freezer's having a problem. Maybe it's just a hot day. I don't know. But here's what I do know. I know that I don't have time to mess with it and I don't want to ruin all of these things because that was the freezer where I keep most of my pre-made meatloaves and whatnot that we use for, for basically quick and easy meals that we can cook. So the freezer may be down. I haven't actually spent the time since getting home to figure out if it's back up. But it was a major save. And the device I use for doing that is YoLink temperature and humidity sensors. They make two kinds. One is an indoor one and one is an outdoor one. The indoor one has like a display and it's not as durable in humidity and rain or whatnot. The outdoor one is like a tank. I ended up originally buying a set of two indoor ones and a hub, which you have to have for it. And I use those in the freezers and they've worked so far. In the case of this freezer, that one's starting to go on the fritz, it turns out, that sensor. So luckily it let me know. And I have, as I've been adding sensors to freezers, I've been buying the outdoor ones so that I can, basically, ultimately, they'll last longer in the freezer. But that being said, the indoor ones have lasted me over 2 years so far. So it's been good. And having that in your freezer for, I don't know, it was probably $120 that I originally spent, is way better than losing $4,000 worth of beef, for example, because you didn't know your freezer wasn't on or the door wasn't closed because your kids went in and grabbed something out and didn't close the door all the way. So anyway, that's the first thing that happened in the pantry. So there's going to be a deep cleaning related to this where I clean that whole freezer, plug it back in and see if it was just that there was some ice buildup or what. And then if it still doesn't work, then I guess I'm down a freezer. We are doing a whole bunch of pickled beets this week. So I've harvested all my beets and we are slowly eating those in salads right now for the week. And I still wanted more beets to pickle because I've done 2 rounds of pickled beets. And a friend of mine sourced me about 20 pounds of beets. So tomorrow is beet pickling day and dill relish day. I brought a jar of dill relish to the SOE party and just handed it to John on the way in the door. And then I got a text message from Amanda on Sunday and she's like, "Did you make this relish?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "We all like it." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a non-sugar based relish that's really delicious." So I've got a whole box of cucumbers to do that with, and it's going to be really great. So pickling at that point, I might make dill pickles. I have to assess how many I have left from last year. I may make a round of dill pickles because everybody likes those. But if I think I have enough from last year, I'm just going to go through the rest of that stock this year so that we don't just have a bunch of unnecessary jars of pickles around. I mean, some people are like, "What are you even talking about, Nicole? Is that even possible? I eat like 25 pounds of pickles a week." Well, we don't, but we do eat. We actually go through pickles mostly when I serve hamburgers at an event. And we cut the pickles in slices for those. So, and then I put some out usually in a lunch platter or something from time to time. So the pre-made meatloaf in the freezer is paying off right now because it's upticked in busyness and the long days of summer are upon us. So we've got Tactical's parents are in town, and tomorrow night I believe we're doing a meatloaf night, and I'm in theory taking meatloaf out of the freezer and we're going to smoke it in the smoker. What's probably really going to happen is I'm going to take beef out of the freezer and do another 8 pounds of meatloaf and serve some and freeze some because I scheduled a light day tomorrow knowing that I hadn't had any days off for a couple weeks. And that may mean that I put some of my effort into making my life easier. We'll see. I have to decide how that's going to go because I also have beets to pickle and relish to make. So at some point it's like too much. I probably just answered that question by telling you I'm going to do it. Now I'm not going to do it. We're just going to do the frozen meatloafs so that we have everything good to go. And other than that, the pantry space that's been redone has way better insulation, but it's too hot in there right now for the kind of storage I want to do. So we'll be integrating a cooling option in there, like a window unit or a standalone room unit for days. I actually want one with a thermostat that can kick on at like 75 degrees or something and keep it cooler in there. The issue is, I think, less about the insulation and more about there are 4 freezers in there and their exhaust is warm. So with that, it's time for our next segment. By the way, I don't have a frugality tip or a shopping report this week, so we're straight on in to Operation Independence. And this is where we talk about building local ongoing revenue into our lives here. And a couple of things have been going on. So with the Holler Hub project, which we've talked about, and I call it the Holler Hub as a placeholder name. That's not its name. But what that is our effort to increase in-person community opportunities here, as well as do things like maybe set up a grocery PMA, for example, where we can leverage, like gather things from our local community and then have a membership-based access to that. I had a great conversation with Lynn, who's over at Base Camp, and she's like, where it would be perfect to do that is actually in the basement at Base Camp, because it's already set up. It's cool. It's got a key code that you can give people who are allowed to go in. And you could set hours and let people come or not come. And it would be a place where you could do it that's, easy to self-serve, easy to access, and easy to load into and out of. And it's funny because I had that thought a couple weeks ago when I was like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I'm going to do this thing. And I thought, well, yeah, but somebody rents that house and it's not really fair to them midway through to say, hey, do you mind if people start coming in and out of your basement? Now, the basement is listed as a shared space on the lease agreement, but still, that's extreme. And she's like, well, you just do hours, Nicole. And I actually would kind of like helping out with that while I'm here and all of those things. So that may happen. We'll see. It depends. So I'm putting this out on the podcast. Why? Because if you have something you would want to put in that kind of a store, it would be a really good idea to email me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, so we can talk about that. And one of the things I think it would be great to add from somebody local would be some produce, whether it be that we put an email out to people and say, you can pick up produce here on, these times, pre-order based on, like on Monday, the farmer says, this is what I have. By Wednesday, you get your order in and you can pick up Friday, Saturday, or whatever. I'm just making up days right now, but that we have a way to do that, because I think that that's a service we can do to connect people with higher quality food. And I think that when you get connection to higher quality food, you just feel better in general. Plus, we have extra stuff here as well. So, and we'll be talking about some of that in the Beat the Heat, because I should have harvested some things before I went out of town, and I did not. So we also probably will be having some GSD weekends, get stuff done, right? Get shit done. Coming up, moving into sort of adjusting how we flow here at the homestead. And it's definitely going to be, opportunities for things like I need to reinstall my solar water heater. And if we're doing that, even if it's on a Tuesday afternoon, I may say, hey, Tuesday afternoon, we're doing this water heater if anybody wants to see how that goes in, right? So the cool thing about Base Camp's basement, though, is it's both a classroom and could be the country store. So I actually really liked that idea. And we'll see. It's not a full commitment that it happens there, but definitely can happen there. I mean, I also just added on to the bean shack for bean storage, and we can have a little set of some things there. The Holler, the Base Camp basement is just bigger and can accommodate more. So if we decide to go big, whoops, I just hit the water bottle against my microphone. Yeah, so if we go big, then that's like a built-in space where we can do it. The second thing is paying for all this is a thing. And y'all know I'm doing the Holler Roast pre-buy. to help offset the need for an HVAC unit at hollerroast.com. And basically what that is you pre-buy a certain amount of coffee. A number of you have done it. I really appreciate that. And you get a gift certificate that you can use immediately. If you are already a subscriber, what we have to do is cancel your subscription, and then I apply it and automatically set up your quote unquote free subscriptions until your gift card is gone or whatever part you want done. But if you participate, you get extras like digital downloads, and at the $500 level, you get 25 extra bucks to use on the site. At the $1,000 level, you get 100 extra bucks to use on the site. We have halfway funded this project, so thanks for everybody for that. I haven't actually really gone very aggressive with the promotion on this, but it is for sure it's hot. And today I call it my sauna session. Like I was out in the roasting shack immediately as fast as I could be this morning so that it would be less hot than if I was roasting right now. And it was over 120 degrees in there. And I came out just, drenched. Tactical's parents are in town and she's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "You just don't even want to be in here right now." Like, cause it's a 550 degree machine just like radiating in there. And that's what inspired today's show, is that particular roasting session. I was like, it's hot, and yesterday was hot, and we need to talk about ways to beat the heat on the homestead. Just like those times in the winter where you have to think about what happens when you have an extreme cold. We've gone from it's hot during the day, mid-80s hot, like not terrible, to it's going to be pushing 100. It's really humid because of all the rain we've had, and the humidity is pushing down from the Ohio Valley right now, I think, for another week. And that means that you're not evaporating very well. So the reason this matters is when you work up into a hot situation, you have time to acclimate physically. And that goes for you, your plants, your livestock. There is a point where it's just so hot, whatever, it's nothing, right? Like nothing is going to help you. But heat waves that come on quickly actually pose a bigger risk to wrecking your garden, stressing animals, stressing you, especially if you don't pay attention to signs of heat exhaustion, right? You pay for it later. So I've had heat exhaustion before. When I was doing CrossFit on a summer like this, and I would always do it at 4 p.m. where it's still really hot. I remember we were doing this cycle of running and doing stuff in the gym, and running and doing stuff in the gym. And there was no AC in the gym, of course, because that's a CrossFit thing, I think. And I remember starting to feel nauseous during it. And I didn't realize like that is in fact a sign that you might be getting heat stroke or heat damage. And I finished the workout, and then I went into the bathroom, and I did not throw up, but I was just like, I was dizzy. And I realized after the fact that I had gotten overheated, and I came back out after that, and I told the gym owners, and they're like, "Oh, we have these ice packs. Here's an ice pack." Because the best thing you can do then, that, like drink water and cool down, that sort of thing. So from the time that happened that summer through the rest of the summer, I was very sensitive to any heat. Like I had to be really careful about not working out at the heat of the day outside, right? And that's what I mean by you ignore the signs, you pay for it later. Well, that happens to your plants too, right? If they get a bunch of heat exhaustion or heat damage, it sets them back, and it might even kill them. So today I wanted to talk about just some different categories of what you can do on your homestead, or if you are a homesteading crafts oriented person who's not quote unquote on an official homestead, even if you're just gardening, there's some things that you'll want to do. So the first thing is to step back and be like, okay, it's suddenly hot. What can I do to keep things as healthy as possible? And what different things do I need to pay attention to? And the first thing that came to mind, although it's maybe not the most important thing, is what does your plant care look like during a heat wave? And if you have cultivated, very resilient plants on your homestead year after year, the heat wave is probably not a big deal for most of them, right? Except if it is, except if it's unusual and they're just not acclimated to that. You might want to give them some extra support if you want them to live. Also, if it's your first year with your orchard and your orchard is out in the full sun and it hasn't rained for a while and it's hot, those trees need water. They probably need water unless you've figured out a way through earthworks to cultivate a situation where they have water that you can't see, like potentially through a swale or something like that. So plant care during heat kind of starts with, how can I protect the plant as much as possible? And what signs do I see that there's a problem? So today, for example, I went out to my garden and I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I watered the garden in the middle of the day. And the reason I did this is that last night I got so tired, I didn't water it last night. And I don't have all my automated watering in. And it was a crazy morning. So by the time that I got through morning, I realized that it had been a number of hot days in a row in raised beds, which have a tendency to like dry out faster, that I had not watered that. And I was like, well, it's better to give some, even though like they say, if you water during the day, the droplets hitting the leaves are going to focus the sun. It's going to hurt the plant. If there's no water in the soil at all, it's going to hurt the plant too. So choose your bad. And also, I've never noticed that to be the case. So if somebody here has actually had that happen when they water their plants, let me know. I haven't actually experienced that. So I have one bed with some mushroom spores in it. I have just all of my vegetable beds. And I went out there and I looked at my Swiss chard, and it's interesting because we have the 4 new beds this year. That's what I'm gardening in. One of them's mostly empty because it had garlic and we're transitioning it to a later crop right now. And then 2 of them have pretty much the same mix of plants, which is like chard and green beans and peppers and eggplant and sweet potato. And the chard has been amazing this year. It's been putting on these big, beautiful leaves. We've had a pretty rainy we've had a pretty rainy spring. And I think that's made the chard really take off here. Plus, I was very purposeful in making sure I had strong microbiology in the soil I was using from my homestead when I started all my seeds. And they have just been way healthier this year than ever before. But each of the 4 beds has a different strategy in what we put in the bed to start the bed. Part of that is because I wanted to know what works best. Part of that is because I did not have biochar for the first bed, so it did not get biochar. But you can see all of the, I'll have to do a bit of a tour of that soon, where you can just kind of see the impact of that. And I went out, and the Swiss chard had on some of the leaves big brown patches. And if I didn't know it had just been like ridiculously suddenly hot and they don't have any real shade out there, I would have thought, oh no, there's some sort of weird disease happening. What I think is happening is they're getting sunburned, because that's what sunburn looks like. On your tomatoes, it'll look similar. You'll get like a real light color and then it'll turn brown, which is different than how the blight is, where you get a brown spot surrounded by yellow, for example. So I was like, I see what's going on here. And then I watered everything. And what I know is that Tactical and his dad are at the store right now getting PVC to help me with the sunburn problem on these plants, where in Tennessee, if your garden is in the full sun, at this time of year, this is where you add shade cloth, because they don't actually want to be in the full sun, even though the box says they want to be in the full sun, right? So we usually have shade cloth over the garden by now, but we have a whole new garden this year, and so I'm a little behind on everything. So what we're doing for the shade cloth is 10-foot tall PVC with corners making a frame, and then I'm cutting shade cloth for each individual one. That's not our long-term plan, but that's this year's plan. This year's plan may endure for several years. We don't know. But that's the first thing, is if you can find a way to shade partially the plant, then you'll do better. Margot's saying, I put nothing in full sun down here. Yeah, she's in Florida. So in Oregon, I put it in the full sun, and I had to, but I had a different sun in Oregon than I have in this part of the United States. I'm further south now, and that's like serious sun. And so my garden gets a lot of morning sun through midday, and starting at about 3 or 4 o'clock, the shade from the western side will shade it. So that part's good. But I just know that that they're getting a little too much. So we're putting, and the reason I'm doing small individual shade cloths is that they can still get sun, right? Because that's important too. But that's the shading strategy this year. The other thing you can do to your plants to help them, I call it girding their loins against the sun, right? To help give them some support, is know that what's happening is they are not uptaking over 85 degrees in temperature. They're not taking up calcium through their roots. And plants need calcium. So a foliar spray of calcium can really help them have the strength to withstand the sun so that they're not as stressed. So tonight, I was supposed to do it last night, too tired. Tonight, Tactical's making compost tea. I'm putting CalMag, magnesium and calcium, into that compost tea, and we're going to foliar spray a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to foliar spray my tomato wall. We're going to foliar spray all the gardens. We're going to foliar spray any random plants we've plopped around the property, because we're having this heat wave for the whole week. And that will help them, because we are darned sure going to be over 85, maybe even at night a couple times, right? So we want to give them the support we can. Deep mulch is something you could have done in advance to help with your plants, because that helps retain the water in the soil. 3 of my 4 beds have deep mulch. The one I'm just turning over from garlic has leaf mulch that's not deep enough. And what's happening with that bed right now is straight up compost is topping it off. And there's a couple plants in there, so I'm just putting it around those plants. But then I'm seeding in some green beans and some other things, plus transplanting a very heat happy plant, basil, in that bed as we, go into the heat of summer. And then hopefully in the fall, one or my beds will transition into the fall garden. By fall, I mean early September. Like, it's almost time to start my seedlings for the fall garden, which is crazy that we're already there right now. So knowing when to leave stress plants alone is also important. So sometimes, like yesterday, I got home, my tomato wall, while we were out of town, had decided it also wanted to misbehave, because it's a mechanical system that's got a hydroponic watering system. The drains weren't working right. And I got home from, was it yesterday? The day before yesterday, I got home, and they just looked wilty. And so at this time, when a plant's wilty like that, it's not the time. I need to trellis them better. It's not the time to trellis the plants. You'll just hurt them more. So if your plants are stressed, getting them some access to water, maybe spraying a little CalMag on there, not in the heat of the day, but when the sun's not hitting them, might help them. But really what they need is water. So you get the water to them, and then you just back off, right? And then, like, one of my tomatoes yesterday didn't perk up until this morning. Like, it took all night to think about it. And now, hopefully this afternoon, because they've stayed strong all day today, hopefully this afternoon I can go out there and finish the trellising, which actually supports the vines better, so they don't, when they get a little wilty, don't fall and bend. Because if they bend and break off, then that's also not great. So, regarding your plants and your orchards, look now at where the problems are and ask yourself this question: is there something I can do that would make things better? For example, one of the bed of mine that's doing the best in resistance to heat is the one where I mixed soil from the ground with compost from the compost bin with biochar. That one, and then we inoculated the biochar in compost tea. Like, that one's done the best the whole time. Like, consistently, that's what you apparently should do when you're starting a raised bed based on all the methods. So knowing that, and knowing that I have a biochar deficit in 2 of the other 4 beds, I will be augmenting back. I'll be adjusting for next year by incorporating biochar into everything that I add. So when I'm saying I'm going to add compost to that bin, I'm also adding biochar mixed in with that compost, right? So that it has a better water retention material in there. That's one of the things biochar is really awesome at. So, um, but on your orchard, if you have an area that's really stressed right now, is there something you can do to help water penetrate and stay in the soil there? Or is there something shade wise that needs to happen? Or is it just a not very strong plant? Like, you can look at those things too and start evaluating what long-term changes you can make to reduce the need to have to support your plants as much during this time of year. And if you find yourself hand watering things for too long, like I did today, you also might want to bump up that plan you had, that aspirational plan you had to put in automated watering or easier watering, just because, a little bit of infrastructure goes a long way, and then you can just like bloop, get the water to the plants. And like last night, if I could have just turned on a thing for 15 minutes and been done with it, then everything I needed to water would have gotten water. But last night, what I needed to do was run around with the hose. Okay. The second thing that comes to mind is livestock management. Now, sometimes Jack Spirko tells a story at the Survival Podcast about how he came to one of his friend's house and it was suddenly very hot and he thought her sheep were going to die. I'm that person. The sheep had lived at my property by that time for a grand total of a week or two. And Tennessee went from relatively mild spring to oven. We are experiencing oven this week. It was earlier in June than this. This was the beginning of the season of no rain when oven happened. And the sheep were like panting like dogs after a hard run. And I was talking to the person I got him from about, like, what do you do in this situation? And she's like, I would just freeze gallon jugs of water and put them out and they could like kind of cool off on them. Well, here's what we had already done. We have a microclimate on the property where it doesn't get as much sun ever. And there's a natural water runoff there, which means that there are some caves around where cold air comes out of them. And it's just a cooler spot in the property. Like, if it's a really hot day, you can go to this part of the property and you're like, oh, that feels a little bit better. Plus it has, green grass instead of concrete or something. So that helps as well. Tactical had moved the sheep to that area on purpose because he knew it was going to be really hot that week. So they were in the coolest place they could be, right? That just requires observing your property and evaluating where are the warmer places, where are the cooler places. And if you don't have a cooler place, look to see, can you start creating spaces on your property where there's cooling? The second thing is always be checking water. Your animals need water once a day, right? Well, if you don't have your water automated, then you need to be out there checking more than once a day, because they may just get really thirsty and drink. They're trying to stay hydrated too. They have a thirst drive too. They might have kicked it over on a week like this. If they kick their water over and don't have water for half the day, they might die. You can add sensors to this too. So YoLink makes the humidity and temperature sensor. I think they make an actual just water level sensor, and they also make, I think it's actually not a water level sensor. It's like a how high am I sensor, that when the water falls, you can program it to let you know. But I believe they have one that would also just detect, is this still wet, right? So you can automate some of that and have informational feedback on that as well. But the deal is this: no water, no life. So on a hot week like this, I have a tendency to take a glance at things to make sure nothing's gone wrong, or have a backup plan. So like the duck water, I don't think we even give them water right now. The duck water is the pond. So when we were feeding them water in waterers, which happens on and off from time to time, we also knew that if the water ran out of water, they could go to the pond. Now they just go to the pond, right? So that works with your other pets as well. You want to make sure the water is up, that they have access to water outside. And shade, again, shade cloth can be used here too, or planting trees to create shade for them. Everywhere you're moving your animals should have shade when it's hot like this. Look for signs of heat stress. So when my sheep were panting like that, they were under heat stress. And I went out there, and some of them still hadn't like dropped all their hair yet because they're hair sheep. So I kind of started pulling out, and then all of a sudden they were dropping hair, right? So I started pulling hair off. Look for signs of lethargy, standing in water, reduced eating. If you have those things, you have to make the decision. Am I letting this animal like peace out, or am I going to give them some support? Am I going to give them a way to cool off? Am I going to run a sprinkler? Whatever it is that you need to do. The thing about heat stress is that heat stress starts slowly and then it goes faster and faster. So the sooner you intervene, if there is heat stress, the more likely it is you're eliminating the chance for a problem. So this then gives you the opportunity to evaluate what your paddock layout is for grazing animals, or your chicken setup is, as far as is there enough ventilation or any of those other things, and decide, like, have you designed it well enough for July and August, wherever you are? Because when you have animals stressed, it's usually your fault. You haven't given them access to enough like ability to heat manage themselves, whatever that looks like. I know when I walk my dogs right now, we walk in the morning pretty early because it's it gets hot here fast. And we go on a walk, and then I take them to the creek and I tell them to get the water. And then my youngest dog goes in there and she plops down like up to her butt and just like lets the creek hit her. And the creek is about 55-degree water. And my bigger dog goes and stands in the water and just lets her, they both drink from the creek. If I was going to walk them longer at this time of year, I'd be paying careful attention to water intake, especially if it's the middle of the day, and look for signs of heat exhaustion. And if we have to stop, because a dog, for example, will just follow you anywhere until they die. Like maybe not until they die, but like if they're really motivated to be with you and keep up with you, they may not be paying attention to their own body's signs that they're getting too hot. And so you want to make sure you have that built into what you're doing. Okay. Now, the thing I should have probably started with, that is my third thing I thought of, is your self-care, your people. Hydration is more than water, right? When we're drinking a lot of water, we're peeing out minerals, and there's all sorts of things people use to give themselves a boost and to absorb water better. Some people add lemon to their water. People drink Gatorade, which is horrible for you. Third Day Beverages actually has a more healthy alternative for electrolyte water, by the way. So you can check that out if you're local to them. And they are expanding quickly. So just know that. You can make your own electrolyte solution or get a sugar-free one. I have drops I can add to my water because I don't want any sugar with it. And then there's some other things that are a little bit more natural, like bone broth can help, or eating cucumbers at lunch. Like cucumbers have some natural, it helps you hydrate capacity there. If you find yourself just unable to hydrate, you also need to cool down and take that seriously. So sometimes you'll be like, I'm drinking all the water, but I'm still dehydrated. Well, that's time to like slow your roll and take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, nothing else is going to live on your homestead either, right? And then plan your day around the sun. Here comes the sun, do, 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 right? Early morning and late in the day are your best times to do things that's hard and outside when it's hot. The middle of the day is a really good time for me to get back into that prepper pantry and deal with the fact that tomato sauce was spilled all over the floor and I just went out of town without cleaning it up. That's my frog I get to eat today, by the way. So that's a good inside activities if you can, or things that are not a lot of physical exertion in the hours of the day when it's hottest. And I've noticed that in the South where I am, those hours are slightly different than the hours on the West Coast. On the West Coast, the sun sets in the west and it continues setting and it just gets hotter. and hotter and hotter as that sun sets, which is like here, like 4 o'clock, it just starts getting cooler. It does not get hotter after 4 here typically. Margot's mentioning this. Hibiscus flowers are good for hydration and water. Yeah, so we collected our hibiscus flowers last year and dried them, and we can totally throw them in anything. Like you can do a sun tea with them. You can just throw them in your bottle of water that you're drinking, whatever you want to do. But that's another way to just help your body absorb the liquids that you need. And that's one that a lot of people just mess up. So yeah. Hey, Alabama says, I was working outside a couple weeks ago while it was still in the 80s, and I put salt in my water when I came in and kept putting more salt in until I could slightly taste it. Yeah. So salt, the evilness of the world, is one of the things that helps you retain water, which is then good for you. So Margot says, I put Redmond salt in my water right now too. Yeah. Yeah. You're basically doing the job of the electrolyte water that you can buy at the store by doing that. You just, it's like salt, I think sodium. Some people add sugar. What else? Some sort of magnesium, or I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments. I don't actually make my own electrolytes. I buy these highlight drops that go in that are sugar-free. Work in bursts at this time of year. Short and intense is better than long and slow outside. I go long and slow inside and just don't stop, but that's when it's cooler inside. But when you have to go outside, like I had to go water the garden, that took me 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes, I was hot. So then I might take a little break and then go do something else if I need to, like load the truck for a dump run or whatever. Tactical does this masterfully. He'll be like, okay, I'm going over the pasture because it's morning. And then he gets back about 10 and we eat breakfast. And then if he does any more outdoors work at that point on projects, it's usually like working on the plants he has down by the pond, which is cool. Or short bursts where he can go and then stop and drink water and chill out. Short bursts, stop and drink water. So signs of heat exhaustion will be that you start feeling nauseous. If you stop sweating, that's really bad. Like sweating's good. You can have lightheadedness happen. You can feel short of breath. Any of those signs, if it's really hot outside, pay attention to them and go get cool. It is way better to just like overreact and get cool than to end up with heat exhaustion of any kind. So know those. Don't tough it out. This is not the time to tough it out. Usually I'm like, just do it. No, this time, take care of yourself. So some things I have used to help with the heat are having, I'm really glad I had my YoLink sensor this year, which was sort of a heat issue because if a freezer goes out right now, it's very quickly up to temperature. If you have a natural feature nearby, like a creek, like I have a 55-degree creek that I can dunk in, this is a place where I'm very excited to go and plunge at the end of the day. Like I'll do an evening stint in the garden very often. And even though it's after 4 p.m., I still get pretty hot. And then I'm like, plunge, and that cools me right down. And then I come back and do the rest of the evening. It's invigorating, right? Use those things to your advantage if you can. And then pay attention to what's not working heat-wise on your property while you're sweating so that you can make adjustments for next year. So those are all my thoughts about beating the heat. Loco, like Phil the Nomad, says farm fresh coconut water out on the farm. Yeah. I don't know about coconut water, but I bet that would be a delicious thing. So Pippin I says, I got to look into the salt thing. I work in a metal roof cinder block wall warehouse in Orlando. Yeah, I bet that's hot. I bet that's really hot. So, but we're totally, if I do a lunch platter today, which probably isn't happening today, but certainly will happen tomorrow. Cucumbers, man, or cucumber water. Like Amani had cucumber water out, and that was really, really, really awesome. So those are all my thoughts on beating the heat at this time of year. Of course, at some point when it just gets too ridiculous, it is what it is, right? You just do the best you can. For me, I end up prioritizing people, animals, and plants in that order. People and animals are real high next to each other, though. Like I want to keep them alive. And if I know there's a problem, I will do anything I can to avoid them having to have that kind of hot heat damage experience, because that just sounds horrible to me. Don't forget that Self-Reliance Festival has tickets on at selfreliancefestival.com. There, we have sold the first 100 tickets. I need to manually change the price to $105 a ticket from $95 a ticket. So like right now would be a really good time to get that done before I get off my butt and change that website thing. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the LFTN newsletter for events and updates and all the stuff going on, all things network, check it out, livingfreeintennessee.com. You can go there and sign up. With that, make it a great week.